Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our course, The Corporation Code. This is part of the Partnership and Corporation. So we are now in our 10th installment of this course, and we're going to discuss Title 9 up to the end of this Corporation Code. So once again, the Corporation Code was enacted and approved in February 2019 by Senate and then signed by the President. So this is Republic Act 11232. This is your host, Attorney Lyndon Masurin, and to discuss, we'll start with Title 9, which is Merger and Consolidation. So when two or more corporations merge into a single corporation, and one of the constituents corporation will retain its identity, that's a merger. But when one or two corporations will consolidate, then a new single corporation will be formed. So the difference between merger and consolidation is that in merger, one of the constituent corporation will remain. Let's say, for instance, banks nowadays are commonly merging. Let's say, for instance, Metro Bank and East West will merge, and they decided that the Metro Bank will retain its identity. So East West will be absorbed, and Metro Bank will retain its name. But their assets are confused, so joined together, including their liabilities, and creditors are protected. So in that case, when one retains its identity, that's called a merger. But if two corporations or two or more corporations will consolidate, then a new single corporation shall be formed, or will be formed. So that's consolidation. Like, for instance, what happened to BPI and Family Savings Bank when they consolidated a new corporation, but the names are mixed, BPI Family Savings Bank. So it's a new corporation. Somehow the names have been retained, BPI Family Savings Bank. So BPI Family Savings Bank is different from BPI. Also, it's different from Family Savings Bank. That's a new corporation. So who will approve the merger or the consolidation? So in each of the corporations, to the board of directors, or in case of non-stock, the trustees, who is a party of the merger or the consolidation, shall approve a plan of merger or consolidation. And they will set forth in the plan the names of the corporations proposing to merge or consolidate here. So the terms are of the merger or consolidation, and the mode in carrying the same into effect. Then the statement of changes, if any, in the articles of incorporation of the surviving corporation in case of merger, and in case of consolidation, all the statements required to be set forth in the articles of incorporation and such other provisions in the proposed merger or consolidation. So once approved by the directors or the trustees, then it will go to the stockholders or members for approval. And the vote required would be two-thirds of the members or two-thirds of the outstanding capital stock here of each corporation. So that's the majority vote. And in case of any dissenting stockholder, he may exercise his right of appraisal in accordance of this code, which is Title 10. Now, if after the plan of merger or consolidation has been approved, and then after its approval, the stockholders, the board of directors decides to abandon the plan. No? What is the effect of such abandonment by the board of directors? The right of appraisal of a dissenting stockholder shall be extinguished. So the dissenting stockholder who dissents or dissented on the plan of merger or consolidation can no longer exercise his right of appraisal because it has been abandoned. Okay, so ratification of the votes of the stockholders. Okay, this pertains to amendment. If there is any amendment of the plan of merger or consolidation, it can still be made. So amendment, still the same. Vote requirement approved by majority vote of the directors or trustees. And ratified by affirmative vote of two-thirds of the outstanding capital stock or two-thirds of the members of a non-stock corporation. So such plan, together with the amendment, shall be considered as the agreement of the merger or consolidation. So the articles of merger or consolidation after the approval of the plan shall be executed by each of the constituent corporation. Constituent meaning each of the corporations which are participating in the merger or consolidation. And it shall be signed by the president or vice president and certified by the secretary or assistant secretary of each corporation. And they shall set forth the plan of the merger or consolidation. Then as to stock corporations, the number of shares outstanding. In case of non-stock, the number of members. So as to each corporation, the number of shares or members voting against the plan. No? So the dissenting shareholders or members shall be stated in the articles. Then the carrying amounts and fair values of assets and liabilities of respective companies as to the agreed cut-off date. So they have to establish a cut-off date in order to ascertain their assets and liabilities. The method to be used in the merger and consolidation of accounts of the companies. Then provisional or pro forma values and accounting method used, and such other information may be prescribed by the Commission or the SEC. So effectivity of the merger or consolidation comes after the commission, after the commission shall issue a certificate approving the articles of the plan, the articles and plan or merger or of the consolidation. So at which the time the merger or consolidation shall be effective. So that's the effectivity of the merger or consolidation upon the issuance of the Commission's certificate, which approved the articles of the plan or a merger or of consolidation. But in case of merger of banks, banking institutions, loan associations, trust, insurance companies, public utilities, educational institutions, and other special corporations which are governed by special laws. So this association or this corporations requires the favorable endorsements or recommendation by the appropriate government agency, which is governing this kind of institutions. Like banks, for instance, this is governed by the Bangko Sentral ng Filipinas, as well as the loan associations, trust companies, insurance companies. For public utilities like transport, public transportation, the LTFRB, the marina in case of marine, the educational, the CHED or the DepEd, as the case may be. So they have to obtain the approval of the governing agency. So what are the effects of the merger or the consolidation? So all of the participating corporations shall become a single corporation, which in case of the merger, there would be a surviving corporation, which is stated in the plan of the merger. Now, so all of the corporations or participating corporations of the merger will decide as to who will survive, no? Or the corporation that will be retained. So in case of consolidation, the designated plan of consolidation. That the separate existence of constituent corporations shall cease, except that of the surviving corporation in case of merger, or the consolidated corporation in case of consolidation. Another effect, the surviving or consolidated corporation shall possess all the rights, privileges, and immunities and franchises of each constituent corporation. So all its powers shall be incorporated. And all real or personal property, likewise receivables, due on whatever account, including subscriptions to shares and other actions, shall also belong to the surviving or the consolidated corporation. So liabilities shall be absorbed by the surviving corporation as well as the consolidated corporation. So as if itself, the surviving corporation and the consolidated corporation has made such liabilities or obligations. So all rights, including patents, copyrights, if owned by the corporation, shall belong now to the surviving or the consolidated corporation. Okay. So ends merger or consolidation. Appraisal right, we have already discussed this, so we'll skip this one. Appraisal rights, the right of a dissenting corporate stockholder. Yeah. The right to be paid of the fair market value of his shares. Okay, let's go to non-stock corporation. So we know that non-stock corporation are made or organized for non-profit, no? So there would be no distribution of dividends, members or officers. So no distribution. So any profit which a non-stock corporation may obtain incidental to its operations shall, whenever necessary or proper, be used for the furtherance of the purpose or purposes for the corporation was organized. So it could not be distributed among its members. So non-stock corporations could be formed for charitable, religious, educational, professional, cultural, fraternity, literary, scientific, social, civic service, or similar purposes like industry, agricultural, and like chambers, Cebu Chamber of Commerce, and any combination thereof, as an example. So members in a non-stock corporation may have a right to vote or may be disqualified to vote or may not be given the right to vote. So if it's not limited, if not broadened or not denied, then every member, regardless of his class, shall be entitled to one vote. And if it is authorized in the bylaws, voting can be made through remote communication or in absentia. So this is a new provision in the corporation code. Now in non-stock corporations, membership or members cannot transfer their right to another person. So membership in non-stock corporation and all rights arising therefrom are personal and non-transferable, unless the articles of incorporation or the bylaws provide otherwise. If not, then it is not transferable. So when is a member terminated? Membership can be terminated in the manner caused by the articles of incorporation or their bylaws. Okay, for the governing body of a non-stock are the trustees and the officers. So number of trustees should not exceed 15 and can hold office of not more than 3 years until their successors are elected and qualified. So trustees elected to fill vacancies occurring before the expiration of the particular term shall only hold office for the unexpired portion. In some instances, an independent trustees may be required by the SEC, and elected as trustee. So before any election or any scheduled election, the corporation, non-stock corporation shall at all times keep a list of members and their proxies of record 20 days before the scheduled election. The bylaws may provide that the members of non-stock corporation may hold their regular or special meetings at any place, even outside the place where the principal office of the corporation is located. So any place, Unlike in stock corporation, stockholders can only hold meetings within the city or municipality of its principal office. But the board of directors can conduct meetings elsewhere, anywhere. Proper notice should be sent to members indicating the date, time, and place of the meeting. So within the territory of the Philippines. Distribution of assets. This is not so. Okay, let's go to closed corporation. So before, closed corporation is defined as corporation owned by family members, but now it has been redefined that a closed corporation is one where the stocks are issued and held of record by not more than a specified number of persons and not exceeding 20. So if the owners of the corporation is held by not more than 20 persons, are held by not more than 20 persons, then that is a closed corporation. All the issued stock of all classes shall be subject to one or more specified restrictions or transfer permitted by the corporation code. The corporation shall not list in any stock exchange, so it should not be listed because it's closed. It should not, or it can make any public offering or its stocks of any class. So it cannot, no? It cannot offer it to the public its stocks, any kind of stocks. Okay. So any corporation can be maybe incorporated as a closed corporation. And these are the exceptions, except mining or oil companies, stock exchanges, banks, insurance companies, public utilities, educational institutions, and corporations declared to be vested with public interest in accordance with the corporation code. So therefore, it's stated here, educational institutions. So Cebu Institute of Technology should offer its stocks to the public because it cannot fall under closed corporation anymore, no? So as I've said, closed corporations before was defined as owned by family members only, but now it has been redefined and stated and provided for that stocks issued by the corporation are held by not more than 20 persons, okay? And it accepted the following, these companies: mining, oil companies, stock exchanges. So no bank can be a closed corporation. No company engaged in exchanging of stocks can be a closed corporation, nor an insurance company, nor a public utility, as well as educational institutions. Those are the exception. No? So in the articles of incorporation of a closed corporation, it will include the classifications of shares, qualifications for owning or holding the same, and restrictions on their transfers. The classification of director into one or more classes. Each one may be voted for and elected solely for a particular class of stock. So if there are several classes of stocks issued, so you can limit the right of particular stock or class of stock. Vote only for the director. Then it should also be included the greater quorum or voting requirements in the meeting of stockholders or directors than those provided in the code. So as provided in the code, the quorum is only majority, no? Which is more than 1/2, at least 1/2 plus 1. But it is provided for here that a closed corporation can provide a greater quorum. So may make their own number. Say out of 20 persons, they can have a quorum at least 15. No? 15 is their quorum. So if they do not reach that number in the meeting, then there would be no meeting to be held. Okay. So the articles of a closed corporation may provide that the business of the corporation shall be managed by the stockholders of the corporation rather than by the board of directors. So it can be stated in the articles that instead that the corporation can be run by the stockholders of the corporation rather than by the board of directors. So long as this provision continues in effect, so no meeting of stockholders need be called to elect directors. So only the stockholders themselves. There's no need for board of directors, only stockholders, no? Provided that the stockholders of the corporation shall be deemed to be directors for the purpose of applying the provision. So the stockholders themselves are the directors of the company. So stockholders shall be same as directors in a closed corporation, if this is provided for in the articles. Okay. So let's go to effects in the issuance or transfer of stock, and there's a breach of qualifying conditions. So if a stock of a closed corporation is issued then transferred to a person who is not qualified or not eligible to be a holder of such, then because he failed to qualify to comply with the qualifications of the persons entitled to be holders of record, then such person is conclusively presumed to have notice of the fact of the ineligibility to be a stockholder. So it automatically presumes that the transferee is eligible, ineligible. I'm sorry, ineligible. Now, if the articles of corporation of a closed corporation states that the number of persons not exceeding 20 who are entitled to be stockholders of record, and if the certificate of such stock conspicuously states such number, the issuance or transfer of stock to any person would cause the stock to be held by more than such number of persons, then the person to whom such stock is issued or transferred is conclusively presumed to have notice of this fact. So meaning if it's stated in the articles that only the number of persons to hold the shares in the corporation, which is a closed corporation, should not exceed 20. And now comes here a new person who is issued, transferred stocks, is the number 21. So according here to the law, he is conclusively presumed to have notice of such fact, that he is not qualified because he's the number 21. Because it is stated in the stock certificate or in the articles. Now let's go to the stock certificate. So if a stock certificate conspicuously, meaning it is very transparent or it is shown that there's a restriction on the transfer of the corporation, has been issued or transferred, has or is conclusively presumed to have notice of the fact that the stock in violation of such restriction. The transferee is conclusively presumed to have notice of the fact that such stock was acquired in violation of the restriction. So these are the effects, no? That's why if you are going to purchase or invest in shares, you should inquire first or investigate if there are restrictions imposed, like should not be more than 20, there should be stated in the shares of stocks or in the articles, because according to the law, you are presumed conclusively. So you cannot deny the fact that, "Oh, I have no knowledge about this. I'm not aware." Why? Because such restriction has been conspicuously shown in the certificate. So it is now up to the buyer or transferee of the stock to investigate. So this is the caveat or note warning. Okay. Now let's go to number 4. Whenever a person or to whom stock of a closed corporation has been issued or transferred is conclusively presumed under this section to have noticed, number 1, of the following: the person's ineligibility to be a stockholder of the corporation, that the transfer of stock would cause the stock of the corporation to be held by more than the number of persons permitted under its article. So when the article says that it should not be more than 20, then if you are number 21, so you are violating the article. That the transfer violates a restriction on transfer of stock, the corporation may, at its option, refuse to register the transfer in the name of the transferee. So the person who has bought the stocks could not compel the closed corporation to have it registered in the stock and transfer book, because it's a clear violation and the transferee is conclusively presumed to know. So that's why there should be investigation first before buying shares of stocks in a closed corporation. Okay. All right. So let's go to the other kinds of corporations, like educational corporations. We are now in Title 13. So first education, then religious corporations, then we have one person corporation, and then dissolution. So educational corporations are also governed under the corporation code, and educational institutions can have a governing body who is the board of trustees. So trustees of educational institutions of non-stock corporations shall not be less than 5 or nor more than 15. So on the other hand, if an educational institution is for profit, like CITU, so it's governed by the board of directors. So what we are talking here are educational institutions which are non-profit. So if ever shall not be less than 5 nor more than 15, provided that number of trustees shall be in multiples of 5. So if not, so in between is 10, no? So it could be 5, the trustees could be 5, 10, or 15, the number of trustees. So unless it is provided in the articles, the board of trustees in schools, colleges, or other institutions of learning, as soon as they are organized, shall classify themselves that the term of office of 1/5 of their number shall expire every year. So every year, 1/5 shall expire. So if there are 15 of them, so 1/5, so divided by 5, so uh, 3 of them has to be replaced, no? So every year. Or if there are only 5 of them, so 1/5 of 5 is 1, so on one trustee will have to be replaced every year until everybody is replaced, no? So that person who is replaced as a trustee cannot run again for another term, no? This is to give others chance to run the educational corporation. So trustees thereafter elected to fill vacancies occurring before the expiration of particular term shall only hold office for the unexpired period. So trustees for educational institution shall hold office for 5 years. No? So trustees elected thereafter fill the vacancies caused by expiration of term shall hold office for 5 years. 5 years now. Okay. So the one to retire every year or 1/5, that is after it has been organized. No? Say as soon as organized. So after it has been organized, 1/5 of the Board of Trustees should expire. Expires, yeah. So, and then the one who will be elected to replace them shall hold office for 5 years. Okay. While those who assume office as Board of Trustees in its organization shall only hold office for a period of 1 year. 1 year lang to. You know? So once replaced, 5 years na dayon. Okay. So a majority of the trustees shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. So, mara na ang trustees, no? So once they are, after they're being organized, they should be replaced 1/5 every year, and the replacement or the persons who are elected for trustees, replacing those who have expired, they can already hold office for 5 years until everybody is replaced. Okay. For religious corporations, let's go to religious corporations. Now there are religious corporations incorporated only by one person. So that is called the sole corporation or corporation sole here. Corporation sole. So who can form? It can be formed by the chief archbishop, by the bishop, by a priest, the minister, a rabbi, or other presiding elder of the religious denomination, sect, or church. So in order to become a corporation sole, the person, the archbishop or the bishop, priest, minister, or any religious, then he may file with the SEC articles of incorporation setting forth the following: that he is the applicant and he is the elder, he represents the religious denomination, sect, or church, and as a purpose of becoming a corporation sole. Then the rules and regulations and discipline of the religious denomination, sect, or church are consistent with becoming a corporation sole and do not forbid the same. No? There's no prohibition on the part of the church. The sect, that such person who's either a bishop or priest or minister, rabbi, and so on and so forth, with the administration of temporalities and management of the affairs, state, the properties of the religious denomination, sect, or church is within the territorial jurisdiction, so described succinctly in the Articles of Corporation. So, meaning that the church, that the establishment of the corporation sole is still within the jurisdiction of the church. Then the manner by which the vacancy occurring in the office of the elder or the archbishop is required to be filled according to the rules, regulations, or discipline of the religious denomination, sect, or church. So it is not within the jurisdiction of the commission. No? So it's provided for by law that you can govern yourself, no? As a church. This is because of the separation of the church and the state, the principle. Okay. So question, when is the corporation sole effective as a corporation, or when does it commence its life as a corporation? It says here that from after the filing of the commission of said articles, verified by affidavit or affirmation, meaning there's a sworn statement, notarized, no? Verified. Either by the chief archbishop, the priest, minister, rabbi, or presiding elder, then it shall become a corporation sole. Mahimo na siya corporation. Okay. This is an exception to the rule that a corporation commences its life upon the issuance of the certificate by the SEC. No? So this is an exception to that rule. Corporation sole or religious corporation will begin its corporate life after the filing with the commission of its articles of incorporation. It shall be personally held in trust. Okay. So once it is it already filed, so therefore it can already, the corporation sole can already purchase owned real properties, personal property for the church or any purpose, maybe charitable, benevolent, educational purposes like that of USC. So therefore they can receive donations, bequests, or gifts for the same purpose. No? And it can also sell, mortgage, so it can already have its own personality and can be sued in court. It can receive order from the regional trial court of the province. No? Any notices, because it's already a person. So filling of vacancies, since he is only one person, so the successor in the office of any chief archbishop and so on and so forth, or the presiding elder in a corporation sole shall become a corporation sole on their accession to office and shall be permitted to transact business as such upon filing of a copy of their commission. So there's also in the church itself, once an archbishop retires, the organization will issue a commission who will replace a said person, no? Who will replace. And it would be, and the commission would be submitted to the, or certificate of election or letters of appointment, and it should be duly certified by a notary public with the commission. So it should be submitted with the commission. Then he is already replaced. There's no need to submit the GIS, which is the General Information Sheet. No, this religious corporation is exempted from that reportorial requirements, because every corporation are required to report or submit GIS, which is General Information Sheet, to the SEC, but not this religious corporation. Okay. Now let's proceed to one-person corporation. A one-person corporation is a corporation with a single stockholder, provided that only natural person or even a trust or an estate may form a one-person corporation. So these persons or tax-paying individual, because a trust is a tax-paying individual as well as an estate, can form a one-person corporation. So banks, quasi-banks, pre-need, trust, insurance, publicly listed companies, and non-chartered government-owned corporations may not incorporate as one-person corporations. So these are the prohibition. So no banks, no quasi-banks, no pre-need companies, trust, insurance. This is another kind of trust, no? So there is it's just like a bank, money. But this trust here is different. It's a contract. So this one is a corporation. This one is a contract. Okay. Contract between three persons, a trustor, trustee, and a beneficiary. Where a trustor has left a property to the trustee who will manage that property in behalf of the beneficiary. So that is a trust. No? Bilin siya o property, bilin niya ni trustee para sa iyahang beneficiary. Here, this pertains to a corporation. Provided further that a natural person who is licensed to exercise profession, like a lawyer or a CPA, may not organized as a one-person corporation. So bawal gyapon ang profession. Only GPP, General Professional Partnership, can be formed by professionals. So minimum stock, capital stock required in OPC or one-person corporation. There is no minimum. No? Shall not be required to have a minimum authorized capital stock. The articles of incorporation of an OPC shall contain the following: single stockholder is if it is a trust or an estate, then the name, nationality, and residence of the trustee, administrator, executor, guardian, conservator, custodian in case of estate. So kung is a trustee in case of trust. Excuse me. Or other person exercising fiduciary duties. Then the name, nationality, residence of the nominee and alternate nominee, and the extent, coverage, and limitation of authority. So nominee meaning in case the trustee will vacate or abandon his what do you call it, privilege, or his privilege as a trustee, then there is a nominee or administrator, guardian, conservator, because all of these people are appointed, no? Appointed either by the court and the trustee by the trustor. No? In case of estate, if a person dies and he has properties that he left behind, and there is he did not during his lifetime he did not appoint anybody to be the executor of his property in case he would die, then these persons, the administrator, the guardian, conservator, and custodian, are appointed by the court. Okay, bylaws of the OPC is not required to submit. They're not required. OPCs are not required to submit or file bylaws. The display of corporate name, the OPC shall indicate after the name of the corporation, OPC. So dapat naingan, OPC. Let's say, what's the name? ABC, ABC, OPC. No? Or ABC Corporation, then close parenthesis, OPC. And the single stockholder shall become the sole director and the president of the OPC. So siya ang director, siya po ang president. But within 15 days after the issuance of the certificate of incorporation, the OPC shall appoint a treasurer, a corporate secretary, and other officers as deemed necessary. Then should be submitted or notify the commission within 5 days from date of appointment. No? So to see Dole, sole director and president, he will appoint secretary, treasurer, and other officers. The single stockholder may not be appointed as a corporate secretary. So we have here a prohibition that the single stockholder cannot assume the office as a corporate secretary. So he is mandated by law to appoint a corporate secretary. Mandate na. So a single stockholder is likewise the self-appointed treasurer of the corporation, shall give a band to the commission in such sum as may be required. But the single director or president can also be holding the position of treasurer. Pwede siya maging treasurer in the corporation, provided that he shall give a bond. No? And provided that said stockholder, now a treasurer, shall undertake in writing to faithfully administer the OPC's funds to be received as treasurer and to disburse and invest the same according to the articles of the incorporation as approved. And every 2 years, the bonds should be renewed. There's renewal of bonds every 2 years. So corporate secretary in an OPC has special functions. She's going to, or he, be responsible for maintaining the books, or the minute books, or the records of corporation. So minute books meaning during meetings, no? Then notify the nominee or alternate nominee of the death or incapacity of the single stockholder. So secretary shall notify the nominee. So there should be nominee. Then which notice shall be given no later than 5 days from such occurrence. So within 5 days. Notify the commission of the death of the single stockholder within 5 days from such occurrence, and stating in such notice he names residence, addresses, and contact details of all known legal heirs. So So this pertains to estate, no? Oh, no, no. All legal heirs. Okay. Then call the nominee or alternate nominee and the known legal heir to meeting and advise the legal heirs with regard to, and among others, the election of a new director, then amending the articles of corporation and other ancillary or consequential matters. So nominee and alternate nominee. So there could be two nominees, nominee and alternate nominee. So a single stockholder shall designate a nominee and an alternate nominee who shall, in events of the single stockholder's death or incapacity, take his place. No? He will take his place as the director and shall manage the OPC's affairs. So the nominee and alternate nominee shall be stated, their names, residence, addresses, their contact number, as well as the extent and limitations of their authority in managing the affairs of the OPC until the stockholder, by self-determination, regains the capacity to assume his duties. So this pertains to incapacity, like if he succumbs into a paralysis, no? Then after 6 weeks, like he has a high blood or hypertension attack, so if some of body parts will not function well, semi-paralysis, then for quite some time after rehabilitation, he can regain. Then he will once again reassume his duties as the stockholder, director, and president in one company. Okay. The alternate nominee shall sit as director and manage the OPC in case of the nominee's inability, incapacity, death. So there's a nominee, but when the nominee is also unable or incapacitated or dies or refuses to discharge the functions as director and manager of corporation, then it shall be his duties will now be assumed by the alternate nominee. So the single stockholder may at any time change his nominee and alternate nominees by submitting to the commission the names of the names and writing written consent. No? But the articles of incorporation did not be amended. So the minute book, the OPC shall maintain minutes book which contain all actions, decisions, resolutions taken by the one-person corporation. So there are no meetings, records in lieu of meetings when actions needed on any matter. It shall be sufficient to prepare written resolution. So maghimo-himo resolution signed and dated by the single stockholder. So there's no minute meeting, no? Pero all actions, decisions, resolutions shall be recorded in the minutes book. Okay. So reportorial requirements, annual financial statements should be audited by independent certified public accountant. But if the total assets or total liabilities of the OPC are less than 600,000 pesos, then the financial statement shall only be certified under oath by the treasurer and the president. No? So di lang kinahanglan og audit by an independent CPA. When is an audit required? When the assets and liabilities of the corporation exceeds 600,000 pesos. Then a report containing explanations or comments by its president on every qualification, reservation, or adverse remark or disclaimer made by the auditor in the latter's report. So there should be an explanation every time an auditor makes a adverse remark or disclaimer, no? Or a qualified opinion, no? Because it should be unqualified opinion, diba? To get a good financial statement. But if the audit report of the independent auditor is qualified, then there's something wrong, no? So that's why the president should explain or comment as to why there is a qualification made by the CPA. Then disclosure of self-dealings, meaning the corporation is dealing with its own self and related party transactions or his relatives, no? Maybe his father-in-law, brothers, so on and so forth, and other reports as the commission may require. Okay. Now, an ordinary corporation can be converted into a one-person corporation. So according to section 131, an ordinary corporation can be converted to an OPC. So when a single stockholder acquires all stocks of the ordinary corporation, so the corporation can be converted into an OPC. So let's say there's a corporation like the CITU, then all the stocks have been acquired by a single person, purchased by one person, then he can now convert CITU into a one-person corporation. So the application for conversion should be approved by the commission, and then once approved, the commission shall issue a certificate of filing of amended articles of incorporation reflecting the conversion. So the OPC converted from an ordinary stock corporation shall succeed the latter and be legally responsible for all the latter's outstanding liabilities as of the date of conversion. So that single person who now heads the OPC is now responsible for all of the outstanding liabilities of the old corporation, no, the ordinary corporation. On the other hand, a one-person corporation can be converted into an ordinary stock corporation. By how? Of course, by this is the invert, no, the inverse. Then after it's converted, the commission should be notified of the fact and circumstances leading to the conversion. Okay. Now let's go to dissolution which is title 14. How is dissolution? A corporation formed or organized under provisions of this code may be dissolved voluntarily or involuntarily. So voluntary dissolution where no creditors are affected or are not prejudiced. There's no creditor having claim against the corporation. The dissolution may be effected by majority vote of the board of directors or trustees in case of non-stock. Then by resolution adopted by affirmative vote of the stockholders owning at least majority of the outstanding stock or majority of the members in a meeting which has been held upon the call of directors or trustees. So only majority vote is required, no? Majority vote is required for its members or the outstanding capital stock. So the notice of the meeting must be given at least 20 days before the meeting. shall be given to each shareholder or member of record personally or by registered mail or by any other means authorized by the bylaws. This is about the notice. So whether or not entitled to vote at the meeting in the manner provided in section 50. And then state the purpose of the meeting, which is to vote on the dissolution of the corporation. So notice of the time, place, and object of the meeting shall be published once prior to the date of the meeting in a newspaper published in the place where the principal office of the said corporation is located of general circulation. So there's still a publication required only once, no? Once in a newspaper where the principal office is situated. A verified request for dissolution shall be filed with the commission stating the reason. You know what is verified? Verified is a sworn statement. Request for the dissolution, form, manner, and time when the notices were given, the names of stockholders, of the members and trustees approving the dissolution, the date, place, time, meeting in which the vote was made, and the details of the publication. So this is after the votation was done. It should be submitted to the commission and requesting the commission for the dissolution of the corporation. And the corporation shall submit the following to the commission: copy of the resolution authorizing dissolution, certified by majority of the board of directors or trustees, and countersigned by the secretary of the corporation. Then proof of publication in the newspaper, the notice of dissolution. Then favorable recommendation formed by the appropriate regulatory agency when necessary. So this pertains to banks, banking, quasi-banks, insurance, pre-need companies, trust, so on and so forth, public utilities. So within 15 days from receipt of the verified request for dissolution, and in the absence of any withdrawal within said period, or wala ning withdraw, it's not withdrawn, then the commission will approve the request and issue the certificate of dissolution. The dissolution shall take effect only upon the issuance of the commission's certificate of dissolution. So same as commencement of life, it will take effect upon the issuance of the certificate of incorporation. So no application for dissolution for banks, banking, quasi-banking, insurance, pre-need, trust, other financial institutions or intermediaries can be made or can be approved by the commission unless accompanied by the favorable recommendation of the appropriate regulatory or government agency. So majority lang if there is no creditors affected. But now, if the corporation may prejudice the rights of creditor, the votes required to dissolve the corporation is still majority of directors or trustees, but 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock or 2/3 of its members is now required. When there is a creditor who is affected, no? Or may be prejudiced because of such dissolution. So still the same request after getting all this, both majority of its directors or trustees, then 2/3 of its stockholders or members, or the outstanding capital stock, the publication, and then a verified petition shall be submitted to the commission stating the reason of dissolution and all of the requirements made. No? So once it is submitted to the commission, the corporation shall also include the list of creditors which are affected. No? So if the petition is sufficient in form and substance, the commission shall by order reciting the purpose of petition fix a deadline for filing objections to the petition, and shall not be less than 30 days nor more than 60 days after the entry of the order. So the creditors are given 30 days to object, but not more than 30 days for filing objections, but not more than 60 days after the entry of the order. So if you are a creditor, you should be, you should act immediately. Yeah? So before such date, a copy of such order shall also be published at least one week for 3 consecutive weeks, once a week for 3 consecutive weeks in the newspaper of general circulation, published in the municipality or city where the principal office of the corporation is situated. Or if there's no newspaper, then in a newspaper of general circulation in the Philippines. So, or it shall be posted for 3 consecutive weeks in the 3 public places in such municipality or city. So, pwede ito sa barangay or city hall. So, upon 5 days notice given after the date of which the right to file objections as fixed in the order has expired, so after 5 days of expiration to file objection, then the commission shall proceed to hear the petition and try any issue raised in the objections filed, if there are objections filed. If there is no such objection filed, then sufficient and material allegations of the petition are true, it shall render judgment dissolving the corporation and directing such disposition of assets as justice requires. So may appoint receiver to collect such assets and pay the debts of the corporation. Okay, very easy. So there should be a hearing first. Once of the hearing, if there are objections, then it will be raised during the hearing. But if there are no objections, then all the material allegations of the petition are true. Then it shall render judgment dissolving the corporation but appointing a nominee, a receiver who will manage the assets of the corporation and pay the debts of the corporation. So the dissolution shall take effect only upon the issuance commission of certificate. Voluntary dissolution may be effected by amending the articles of incorporation by shortening the corporate term. A copy of the amended articles of incorporation may be submitted to the commission with this code. So instead of filing a voluntary or a dissolution, petition for dissolution, the corporation can amend its corporate term. Let's say it's for perpetual existence, no expiration. Then it wants to end its corporate term. So by shortening it to 2 years, so after 2 years, the corporation will no longer exist. It will expire. So shortening its term instead of dissolving. So upon the expiration of the short-term term stated in the approved amended articles, the corporation shall be deemed dissolved without any further proceedings. So there's no proceedings, there's no liquidation. In case of expiration of corporate term, dissolution shall automatically take effect on the day of the following the last day of the corporate term. It is stated in the articles. So if this term is stated that only the term of the corporation, the last day of the corporation would be December 31, 2020, then January 1, 2021, the corporation shall automatically dissolve. So request for or petition for dissolution may be withdrawn by way of a written, also verified by this incorporator, director, trustee, shareholder, or members, and signed by the same incorporators, signed by all of them. No? Not later than 15 days from receipt of the commission of the request for dissolution. So submit, that's, they have submitted prior request to dissolve, but then they will now abandon their plan to dissolve. So you have, the corporation will now submit request to withdraw the petition for dissolution. And it should be submitted to the SEC 15 days from receipt of the request for dissolution. Then now we discuss involuntary dissolution. This happens when a corporation, motu proprio, meaning by itself, or upon filing verified complaint by an interested party. There's a party who is now interested in dissolving the corporation, can be dissolved if it did not use its corporate charter within a period of 3 years from date of incorporation, no? Or continuous in operation of corporation for a period of 5 years. After its incorporation, it operated, then it suddenly ceased operation, and then continues in operation for 5 years, will dissolve the corporation involuntarily. So upon receipt of a lawful court order, there's a court order now dissolving the corporation, or upon finding final judgment that the corporation procured its incorporation through fraud, or upon final judgment that the corporation was created for purpose of committing, concealing, or aiding the commission of securities, or aiding the violation, or smuggling, tax evasion, money laundering, graft, and corrupt practices. Or it is committed or aided in the commission of securities violation, smuggling, tax evasion, money laundering, and corrupt practices, and its stockholders knew of the same. So there's knowledge of the stockholders. Then repeatedly and knowingly tolerated the commission of graft and corrupt practices or other fraudulent or illegal acts by its directors, trustees, officers, or employees. If the corporation is ordered dissolved by the final judgment, its assets, after payment of its liabilities, shall, upon petition to the commission with the appropriate court, be forfeited in favor of the national government. So all of its property shall be forfeited to the national government because it's a result of a crime. So most of this one are usually if it's decision of the court. So such forfeiture shall be without prejudice to the rights of the innocent stockholders and employees for services rendered. So if there's an innocent stockholder, he may be given right. No? So the commission shall give reasonable notice to and coordinate with the appropriate regulatory agency prior to the involuntary dissolution. So corporate liquidation, we will no longer discuss this one. Foreign corporations, location of licenses. Oh, powers of the, so the, if there are any violation of the code, the penalty has gone up now. 2 million pesos. And if there are obtaining corporate registration through fraud, it's gone up now. Penalty is not less than 400,000 to 5 million pesos. No. if it is injurious or detrimental to the public. But if not, then the punishment is a fine ranging from 200,000 pesos to 2 million pesos. But if it is injurious or detrimental to the public, then 400 to 5 million pesos. And if there is collusion of the independent auditor, giving false or misleading misstatements, then the penalty is 80,000 to 500,000 pesos. But if there is fraud or has effect causing injury to the general public, then the auditor or the responsible officer may be punished with a fine ranging from 100,000 to 600,000 pesos. So if you are going to be CPA, you should exercise prudent, meaning care, and be diligent on your work, no? Because you might succumb to these penalties. Fraudulent conduct of business, the penalty is 200,000 pesos to 2 million. But if it is injurious or detrimental to the public, it's 400 to 5 million pesos. If the corporation is used as an intermediary for graft and corrupt practices, then the penalty is 100,000 pesos to 5 million pesos. Also, intermediary for graft and corrupt practices, the penalty would be 100 to 1 million pesos. So if your company is being used by a politician, let's say you have like an NGO, for instance, non-government organization, and you are the one who is a beneficiary of the donations from the government, like not donations, like pork barrel, for instance, like what happened with that issue of the senators, like Revilla and I don't know, Estrada. There were companies involved there, but these companies can now be penalized, no, for graft and corrupt practices, and the penalties are very high now. See, tolerating graft and corrupt practices, it's 500 to 1 million pesos. The directors and trustees will now be punished with this fine. Now, as far as whistleblowers, so who are whistleblowers? They are the one who provide the truthful information relating to the commission or possible commission of offense or a crime or violation of the code, no? Like the whistleblower in the Dilima case. So if you retaliate against the whistleblower, if your company retaliates against the whistleblower, interfering with the lawful employment or livelihood of the whistleblower, or committing an act which is detrimental to the whistleblower, then you will be now be punished and fined from 100,000 to 1 million pesos. And other penalties, 10,000 to 1 million. Okay, so these are the other provisions, the powers of the commission. So the commission, in section 178, they have visitorial power. They can, meaning they can exercise visits. They can visit the premises of the corporation in order to examine, inspect records with the regulation and supervision of activities, enforcement of compliance, or imposition of sanctions or penalties. No? So that's the power of the commission. It can visit companies or corporations. Now, should the corporation, without justifiable cause, refuse or obstruct the commission's exercise of its visitorial powers. So the commission may revoke its certificate of incorporation. So it is within the power of the commission to revoke the certificate of the incorporation of the corporation. All interrogatories propounded by the commission and answers thereto, as well as results of the examination made by the commission or by any other official authorized by law to make the examination as to operations, books, records of the corporation, it shall be kept strictly confidential. So this should be, now if the commission, Securities and Exchange Commission has there is a whistleblower, no, alleging that your corporation is involved, then the commissioner of the SEC can now exercise its visitorial powers. So the commission or any examiners will visit your corporation for examinations of your records, your books of accounts, your operations, and you have no right to refuse such power, exercise of power. Now in section 179, these are the powers, functions, and jurisdictions of the commission. The power to exercise supervision, jurisdiction over all corporations and persons acting in their behalf. And pursuant to Presidential Decree 902A, retain jurisdiction over pending cases involving intra-corporate disputes submitted for final resolution. So intra-corporate disputes are now within the jurisdiction of the RTC or Regional Trial Court. But if there are any pending, it is still within its jurisdiction. Then the commission shall retain jurisdiction over pending suspension, payment, or rehabilitation cases. So this pertains to corporations which are undergoing rehabilitation or debt restructuring. No? Itong na purdoy ba? Then as requested for freezing of their liabilities so that the creditors cannot demand payment. So you have to file. You have to file before the Securities and Exchange Commission. Another power, impose sanctions for the violation of the code, promote corporate governance and protection of minority investors through, though among others, the issuance of rules and regulations consistent with international best practices. Then the commission can issue opinions to clarify the application of laws, rules, and regulations. So it is within its power to interpret laws. No? I mean, issue opinions, not interpret, but issue opinions. It can issue cease and desist orders ex parte, meaning without any without any other parties, just by itself, it can issue cease and desist order in order to prevent imminent fraud or injury to the public. Hold corporations in direct or indirect contempt, and in this case, the officers and directors of the company will be imprisoned. Contempt. You cannot imprison a corporation, but you can imprison only the officers or directors. H, issue subpoena ducis tecum. This is, if you are the corporation, then you are mandated or compelled to give document, no, in the court. That is ducis tecum, to produce a document and summon witnesses to appear in proceedings before the commission. So these witnesses will have to testify. In appropriate cases or order examination, search and seizure of documents, papers, files, records, and books of accounts of any entity, person under investigation. It can also suspend, revoke the certificate of incorporation after proper notice and hearing. Dissolve or impose sanctions on corporations upon final court order for committing, aiding in the commission of any manner, furthering securities violations, smuggling, tax evasion, money laundering, graft and corrupt practices, and other fraudulent or illegal acts. Then the commission can issue writs of execution and attachment to enforce payment of fees, administrative fines, and other dues collectible under this code. So if the director has been found guilty of abetting graft and corrupt practices and has been fined 5 million pesos and he will not pay, then the commission has the power to issue writs of execution. So if the commissioner knows or the SEC knows that the director owns a house, then his house can be subjected to writ of execution and attachment. So it will be seized and forfeited in behalf of the government. The letter M prescribe the manner, the number of independent directors and minimum criteria in determining the independence of a director. So, and impose, recommend new modes by which stockholder, member, trustee may attend meetings or cast their votes. So he has like this one, or in absentia. Formulate and enforce standards, guidelines, policies, rules, and regulations to carry out the code and exercise such other powers provided by law. Okay, those are the powers of the commissioner or the Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay, so this code is applicable to all private corporations, and the applicability to existing corporations, new requirements. So the new requirements for, if there are new requirements under this code, it shall be given, corporations are given 2 years to comply. No, 2 years to comply upon the effectivity of this code. So the old corporation code has been repealed. Here has been repealed and replaced by this RA 11232. Effectivity date of this code, at least two, upon the completion of its publication in the official gazette, and that is 15 days, after 15 days from publication. This was signed in February 2019 by our President, Rodrigo Duterte. That ends our topic. And for questions, clarifications, suggestions, you mail me at my gmail.com or at our MS Teams group or chat group. So coverage, another examination is coming. So you study partnership and corporations. Stay safe always and have a good day.